Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up with the word object when we're managing words. So what is left to do after we import the language and we import the text? We can also just overwrite the text with whatever we want to type in here. We want to have a audio file that we can then play and listen to make sure that we've loaded it correctly. And then we need to save, and then we're complete with the word portion. So let's start by double clicking on open audio and then coming back and double clicking on play audio, and might as well include save as well because we're going to need all of these. So let's think first of how we're going to open the audio. So to open audio, we need to get to the location where the audio is stored, and we're going to need to then save that as a variable that we can then use. So let's come up to the top here, and we're going to need to include some variables for this. So let's put in a note and do audio variables. And we're going to need a public string of, let's just call it audio file location. We will set that to nothing to start with. We're also going to need the audio file directory. That's going to be set to nothing as well. And then we're going to need to update the actual text of the label that we're going to be using. And we'll call it the audio file label text. And that's going to start off with the location of audio file with a space after that. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use this chunk and append the actual text in. And I just saw that I've got a typo here. Let me fix that. So we're going to start with this on the label, and then we're going to append to the end of it the actual file location. So we need this boilerplate because otherwise we will lose this data, and I don't want to hard code it later. And if I want to update it, it's just an easy thing to update here. So this should be sufficient for us to get all of the audio file loaded. So let's get back to where we open the audio file itself. So the first thing that we're going to need to check is that the directory for audio exists. So we're going to need a directory.exists, and we're going to be checking for the audio file directory. So this has to exist. If it doesn't exist, we'll put the not in here to say that it doesn't exist. And so with the not, if it doesn't exist, then we need to create this directory. So we can put in directory .create directory. It autofilled for us. And now we've created the audio. We don't need to actually put anything in there ourselves. We just need the directory to exist. So the first time through, you can just run this, click on that, let it create it, and then you can go use your Windows Explorer or however you want to do the file exploring stuff to drag and drop files. But we need this to exist, and we only need to create it if it doesn't exist. So that's what this will do. After we're done with that part, then we're going to need to use the open file dialog command here. And we're going to set this up as a, let's just call it get audio file. And that's going to be a new open file dialog. And we can say get audio file dot title. And we'll set the title to select audio file, like so. And then actually we don't really need the colon at the end because this is just going to be the title of the window. Let me save really quick. Then we can do get audio file, and we're going to set the restore directory to true. And this will help it automatically open where we want it to be located. And we can say get audio file dot initial directory is going to be set to this audio file directory that we're going to be reading. So this will just open the window, put us into the correct directory. Finally, we're going to need to put in a filter so that we put in the filter so that it's only going to show the files we want it to do. And we'll label this as audio files. And I'm going to limit it to WAV files right now. You can actually include like MP3s, files, things like that, whatever you want to do, but I'm going to exclusively use WAV files as I'm doing this. So this is the setup to get the window to open correctly. Then we just do the call to show dialog on this. So we're going to do if the dialog result is okay, that's what we're looking for, then we know that the audio file location is going to be the audio file dot file name. So when we open the window, if the result comes back as okay, we know we've got the right file. So this is what we're going to do. And now we can update the audio file text. And what we're going to update it to, again, is when we'll use the label that we created up here. So we're going to start with the audio file label text. Audio file label text. And we're going to add in after that the audio file location. So we'll save that here. Now, one other thing that we're going to need to do as we're creating this, we're going to need to save this data in to the actual word that we're creating here. So to create the word that we're going to save that in, we do have to come back up here to the top, and we're going to have a word. We have a words of current word, and that's going to be a new words object. So we'll save that, and then we can come down here and also include the fact that the current word dot audio file is also going to be set to this audio file location. So now we've stored that in our file that we're going to be keeping this data with. That's the easy way of getting this information here. If we save and run it, then you'll see that the audio file lookup is this normal Windows stuff that we see when we are opening files in general. So let me move this over, select myself, come in here, go to Manage Lexicon. We come over here. We select a language. We'll just keep it in English for now. I'm going to say test. We'll hit add. When this comes up now, when we click Open Audio, we can see that the directory that I was trying to create didn't work in this case because we didn't pull in where the audio file directory is. So we need to actually update where that audio file directory is. So we do need to determine how the directory here is going to be filled out. There is a slight hiccup with this. The way that I'm envisioning this, and I'll just put a note down here, is going to be a temporary note. So I'm just putting in here the format we're going to be using is basically we're going to have the base path, then we're going to have a slash, and then we're going to have the language ID with a slash, and then it's going to specifically say audio. And then we'll have another slash, and then we'll have the actual files at that point. So this is kind of the structure. What that means is we need to have this language ID in order to create the correct directory. Now, if you remember, we created the definition back here, the dictionary. We created the dictionary so that we can have these IDs mapped. And as I'm looking at this, I actually think I got this reversed from what I want it to be. I actually want the key to be the string and the long to be here. So I'm going to have to update this really quick. So it's string and long. We'll put that in. And I believe I've got this somewhere where this, yes, this is where it's going to be reversed here as well. So if we just copy this, come back over to here, paste it, and do the comma. This should put it in the correct order. So the reason why I'm doing that is when we are passing this in to the new word, we can actually set the language ID. So we'll come back over to here. And what we will do on here is we'll create the public, and this is going to be a static, and it's going to be the long. And what this is going to be is the language ID value, and we're going to set it to 0 on here. If it does exist, though, then we can actually include it in this part, because if it's launched from Manage Lexicon, we'll have it. If we don't launch it that way, we're going to have to create a method down here. So let's put in the else statement that we're going to need, and this is handle the functionality when this is launched outside of Manage Lexicon. But we're not interested in that right now. So we're only wanting this part here. So part of this will be include selecting the language for the combo box and get the language ID value. So we're going to need both of those, but we don't need to do that for this part because we will be passing that in from here. So how are we going to pass that in to here? Well, obviously it'll be during this part here. We've got the lexicon language sent right here. So what we can do for this next part is we can actually use the lookup. So put in manage word.language ID value is equal to, and we're going to come up here and grab the dictionary of language IDs. So dictionary of language IDs at language sent. Yep, I didn't spell it correctly, so there we go. So this will actually look up the key of the text of the language and return back that value. And let's just test really quick if this is working. So we'll come back to the word and we'll come in here and let's just put in here a quick message box show. And we're going to show language ID like this, and we'll add in language ID value to string so that it will show up. We'll hit that. We'll save this and we'll run this really quick. Come over to here, select my name, come down here, manage lexicon. We'll select Arabic, doesn't really matter at this point. And you can see we've got this language ID that comes in. We can close out of here. If I choose English and hit add, we can see that there's this one. Exit that, and of course the Spanish, when we add, it's got that one. So these are different and it is storing that information. So this is coming through as we need it to. So now the location of the audio directory can be built. So the audio file directory is going to be form1.basepath. That's the form1.audio directory, plus the language ID value, plus, and then we'll use this @ sign with a quote and the backslash like this. This will end it with a backslash at the very, very end. So the reason why the audio directory here works, if we come back to here, the audio directory, you can see we have this @ sign there. That lets us put in the escape characters without having issues. And you can see that audio is going to function as a directory. So we're including this bit and we're setting it up within managed words. So this is going to be the actual real audio directory. So now if we run this, when it comes up, we can come over here, select user, come into here, manage lexicon. Now we can come in, we can say English, I'll put test as a word, it can come into here. If we do open audio, now we've got this file. And I've already created a couple of these for the previous version, but you probably will not have these existing at all. So this is the location though that we're going to want to use. So if we want to, I can even just pick, we're doing test, so I can choose test here and hit open. And you can see that it's kind of on here. Now it doesn't really fit on here, so I'm not sure that this is the most useful label to put in here. For a final bit, we probably will just change this text to file loaded or something like that. So I'll put this as a note, label audio location.text equal file loaded, something like that. And it'll just have some kind of feedback so that the user knows. Now, the one other thing that we'll need to do as soon as this happens is we do need to make the play button visible. So the button, which is going to be play audio, we're going to make it enabled. It's already visible, but this will make it enabled. So now somebody can listen to it and make sure that it's working. So we'll save this and come to the play audio. How do we actually get the audio to play now? So the good news is it's a relatively straightforward process for here too. And what we're going to do, just in case you're trying to load a media file that isn't audio, if you load the wrong file, we don't want to cause anything to crash. So we're going to start with a try statement. And the try statements always have a catch, and we're going to do the exception of EX for that. And we'll just do a quick message box.show, and we'll just put out that there was an error, and we'll actually include in the ex.toString to make sure that comes out. We can even put in a comma and say error loading file. like that. That way the user will be notified of what the actual issue was. Most likely it's the file didn't exist or it wasn't really an audio file. But if we want to actually play this, again, we have to make sure that the audio location exists. So if the audio location is nothing, we're going to just ignore this. So if they do enable it, there's no actual location. For some reason, it's still enabled. Well, they won't be able to crash the system at this point. But if it isn't blank, then we can create a system media sound player. And we can just call it sound player like it's prompting here. And that's going to be a new system media sound player. Then all the sound player needs, this is the ultimate one, but first we need to tell it the sound location. So the sound location is going to be this audio file location. And then we just load that in, and then we play that text. So we play that file. So it's very, very straightforward. Now we can save this and run this. Because I've already got pre-selected audio, we'll be able to check this. So we'll come over here, select English. I'll do just add that in there. Then you come over here and say, open the file. It's going to be test audio. We'll open that and then we play.
Test.
And you can see it works. And you can press this button again.
Test.
So as many times as you want to press that, it will work. Now, obviously, you saw I had to keep loading this because the save is not put into place yet. So let's get that next. So to save, we're going to actually need a couple of things. In order for this to work, we're going to actually need to both save and load all of the words that exist. So let's start with a public void load all words function or method that we're going to make. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to load data for the language selected, right? But to create the file, to create this file, we actually do need to come up here. Let's just make a quick public string, and we're going to call this the language directory. And we're going to make this equal to nothing to start with. And then it's going to be the same for no matter what we're going in. So it doesn't have to be within this. So we can just make this as the first thing where we do language directory is going to be the form1 base path. And then we're going to add in the @ with the quote around the backslash character. And then we're going to add in this language ID value. And we can even end it with another one of these, right? So we're going to just create this as our language directory. When we come down here to load the file, we're going to have a string with the file name. And that's going to be this language directory plus the form1 words file that we've gotten. So if we come back to form1 really quick, the words file here is just words.dat. So basically all this will do is every single language will have its own directory, and the words.dat will be specific to that particular language itself. You don't have to worry about all the words being in one big pot and you have to figure out which one goes to which language. They're going to be segmented to begin with. So again, we do the obvious if file exists file name. We always have to check that. If it does exist, then we're ready to get the contents here. So we're going to do the string file contents is going to be the form1 load data method that we've used dozens of times already. We'll do this. Put in a semicolon to end that. Then we're going to need the string array of file rows, and that's going to be the file contents dot split, and it is split on the form1 dot line separator that we always use. And then of course we loop through these. I equals 0, I less than file rows dot length minus 1, I plus plus. So this should be pretty familiar by now. And we're going to split up the array here of the file fields, which will be the file rows of index I split with the field separator, not the line separator. So we'll get this in, field separator. Now we can just do our normal usual thing. We're going to need a temporary word. So it's going to be words of temp word is a new words. But we're also therefore going to need to add this to a list of all the words. So we can come up here. I'll just put that under here. We'll do list words of all words is a new list of words. So we'll put that in, come back down to this. So when we create this new one, the temp word.id is going to be this first value that we're pulling out. We have to, again, parse it back to a long. Again, this should be very familiar, so I'm not going to spend too much emphasis on here describing all of this, just because we've done this in other places. So if you do have questions, though, feel free to ask in the comments, and I will get to them. On that, we can put in this is 1 on there. And then finally, we can add in, for anything that does exist, it's already going to have an audio file, so we will do that as the file fields 2. And then we add this to the all words like so, and this will give us a list of all the words that exist. So we'll have this ability to load all the words, and then we're going to need to have another public void save all words that we'll be using. And this is very similar. So again, we do the search for the directory exists again, and because we've already created it, it's going to be the language directory. So we'll check if it doesn't exist. We do want to create it. Directory create directory language directory. So the first time we're creating a brand new word in a language we haven't used before, this will create the correct directory that we're going to need. And we'll do the string file name once again. It's going to be the same language directory plus all of this data. And we're going to need the output variable, and we'll start off with nothing. But this time what we'll do when we loop through, we're going to loop through the int of I. It's going to equal 0, I is less than. This is going to be the all words dot count, and then I++, because we're going to add in every single word. Now, again, the reason we have to do this is when we save data, we have to make sure that we're saving the entire set of data. If we're only saving one item, it's going to delete everything else, and we'll lose that. So we'll have to load in all the words, add the one we're looking for, and then save all the words back. So again, that's why we're doing this. Now, when we are building this, it's going to be the reverse of what we did above. So the output's going to equal the output again, but we're going to add in all words from I, and we're going to start with the ID, which we're going to need to put into it as a string, and then we do the form1.field separator at this point. So we'll add that, and then we're going to do the output is going to be the output again, but now we're going to add in the all words at this index for the word or phrase that we're using, plus the form1.field separator. Then the output is going to be the output plus all words at this index for the audio file portion. And we're going to add in the form1.field separator once more. And finally, we add in the form1 line separator to round it all out. Then once we're done, we can just use our form1 save data. We'll send in the file name and the output. So we'll be able to send all of that in. So these two methods will let us load and save all words. And let's just actually come up here, and once we have the language set, which I will include as part of this part, not part of this, because we're still going to need to select the language here. So it's going to be part of this up here. We'll go ahead and load all words up here. That way, when we first enter in, we're going to have a load of them all. And then when we come down to the save, then what we're able to do here is we can just create the current word.id, and this is where we have to do another check, because if you remember, we have the ability, back up here, to do this in edit mode. So we will actually have to check. We'll need a new ID if we're not in edit mode, but if we're editing, we want to keep the original ID because we don't want to change that. So we'll need to say if we're not in edit mode, Then we're going to do this step here. Current ID is going to be the form1.generateID method that we've used before. The current word or phrase is going to be what we have in the text word or phrase box with the .text. The current word audio file is going to be the audio file location that we've done earlier. Now, one other thing, this would be sufficient to add this to the list right now and then just save it, but it might actually be useful to check and make sure there isn't a duplicate. Now, we can have duplicate words where they're spelled exactly the same because there are, I believe they're called homonyms or homophones. I don't remember which one's which now. I think homophones are the ones that sound the same, or homonyms are the ones that are spelled the same, if I recall. So homonyms are where the exact same word has two different meanings depending. So like L-E-A-D can be either lead when it's a lead somebody, like the lead actor, or it can be lead, like when it's a pipe, a lead pipe. So there are the abilities to have duplicates out there, but we want to at least warn somebody if there is a duplicate. So we can actually do a duplicate check first, but how are we going to do a duplicate check? I think probably we'll want to make this into its own method as well. So I'll come up here, and what we can make this one, it's just going to be a bool. It's either going to be true or false. We're going to name it check for duplicates, and it's just going to take in a test word, right, as a string. So we'll send in the string. It's going to check and see if there is a duplicate, and we'll just loop through all of the words again. .count. Actually, we don't need the method in this I++. I think that's sufficient on this. So we're going to say if the test word is the same as all words of this index .word or phrase, then we return true. Otherwise, when it's all said and done, we return false, right? So this is just a quick little thing that we can test for. So we can come over here and we can just say, we can put this into an if statement anyways. We can say if check for duplicates, and we send in the current word that we're on. So this is going to be the current word or phrase. So we'll send that in. If it is a duplicate, then we can just have a dialog result is going to be a result, and we'll say it is equal to the message box.show of there is already a word with that same spelling. Do you want to save anyway? Question. And this is going to be potential duplicate as our title, and we're going to need the message box buttons of yes or no. So this will do that, and I only need the one closing on there. So we'll do that, and then if result is not equal to dialog result.yes, then we can just exit at this point. So because this is a method, we can actually just say return, and we're done with this. Otherwise, we will continue. And what we're going to do at this point, they clearly want to add it, so we just do all words dot add current word. So we'll add that in there. And then all we need to do at this point is we need to save. But of course, the saving is going to be something we'll do in both of these. So this is where we are in edit mode. Edit mode. So we will do a bunch of code in here. But when we're done with that, we're still going to go to the save all words again. And then we can just close this at that point. Once we save, we can close this. We don't need to keep this open any longer. So I will do this to close it. But one thing that we also need to do that I just remembered here, we do need to send this data back. We need to send back what we have just created so that when we launch it from Manage Lexicon, then we'll know. So we actually will need to come over here and let's create our own public static here. So it's going to be a public static, and let's do it as a word of returned item. We'll just call it that. And it's going to be a new word, right? We need the word new there. Okay. So returned item is going to be this, and then from here, what we can do is, we're not in edit mode. We do want to make sure that we also definitely launch this one. So we're going to check if it's launched from managed lexicon. Then we want to go back to the managed lexicon dot returned item, and that's going to be the current word. And do we want to do the whole word? I'll do the whole word for now. We might want to actually restrict this to just the text of the word later, but if we pass the whole word, it's not going to hurt anything yet. We can figure that out later. If it's not from here, so basically, yeah, so sorry, I'm making sure my logic is correct on here. So if we're not launching it from the managed lexicon, we are actually done at this point because we don't need to feed this back. So yeah, we don't need an else statement on this at all. This is all we need on there. So the only else is when we're in edit mode. And when we're in edit mode, it's actually going to be the exact same thing, except we don't, basically we do not update the ID. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to need to have an index of which word we're in this file. So let's come back up here, and we're going to do a public int of, we'll do edit index, and we'll set it to -1 to start with, because if it's -1, then we want to ignore it. So obviously the index itself needs to be greater than -1. And then what we'll do at this point is, when we include the language for the combo box and get that, we also need to update the edit index to the selected word. And I'm not going to go into that part yet. This is going to be part of our next video most likely, because the reason editing is so important is, once we have the words in here, if we double click on the word in here, then I want it to launch this in edit mode. So that's going to be where we can edit this file. But again, that's going to be in our next video. So I will talk with you guys later.